A father left his young daughter in the care of his mother to be with his new spouse, and upon returning 10 years later, he was astounded to discover that both his daughter and mother were nowhere to be found. After her husband deserted her when their son Nicholas was only 7, Doris Dacker took on the responsibility of being a single mother. Although challenging, she worked tirelessly at 2 jobs to ensure that her son never had to experience any shortages. Back then, she'd been 30 years old. She never imagined she'd become a single parent once again at the age of 60. Nor did she imagine her son would abandon his daughter. She never thought he had that much of his father in him. Nicholas had married a lovely girl, Sandra, but unfortunately, she passed away when their daughter, Paige, was 9. Doris had told herself that Nicky had been lonely. That's why he'd taken up with Donna just weeks after Sandra's death and married her within 6 months. Doris had been concerned to see little Paige, who had once been a happy, boisterous child, become quieter and quieter, but she attributed it to the loss of her mother. She still believed her son was a good man, but not for long. The summer Paige turned 10, Nicholas came around and asked Doris if he could take care of Paige for 3 weeks while he and Donna went on a vacation to Alaska on their own. All couples need time alone, Mom, Nicholas had said, and Paige has become difficult of late. She resents Donna. Doris was surprised but agreed. "Oh, Nicky," she said, "I think a break might be good for all 3 of you. But if you permit me, I think Donna knew what she was getting into. She knew you had a daughter. A grown woman should be able to deal with the pain of a 10-year-old still trying to come to terms with her mother's death and her father's swift remarriage." Nicholas flushed scarlet and puffed up his lips in a gesture Doris knew well. "I should have known you'd take Paige's side," he cried. "Donna loves me, she makes me happy, and that's all that matters to me." "I would have thought someone had to be on Paige's side, and I'm surprised it's not her father," Doris replied, stung. "And making your daughter happy should make you happy too." Nicholas walked out in a huff, but when he came back a week later with Paige and her suitcase, he seemed his happy, normal self. He kissed Paige goodbye affectionately and gave Doris a hug. "I'll be back on August 27, Mom," he said, and drove off with a cheery wave. Doris and Paige wouldn't see him again for over a decade. August 27th came and went, and Nicholas didn't show up. Doris phoned her son, but was stunned to discover his number had been disconnected. Nicholas hadn't called his daughter since he left, but he had occasionally replied to her text messages. Now it seemed he was gone. Doris discovered that the house Nicholas and Sandra had bought had been sold. He was gone. He'd abandoned his daughter with his aging mother without a word or any concern for her well-being.
Also, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these animal stories every day. Now, back to the story.
Doris sat down with Paige and told her, "Listen, we will manage, you and I. I don't want you to worry. I'll take care of you. I love you, Paige, and I know that your father will come to regret what he has done." Doris didn't know how right she was. 10 years later, Nicholas drove up to his mother's house. The house was there, but it looked abandoned and decrepit. The garden was overgrown, and the windows were shuttered. Nicholas knocked on his mother's neighbor's door. The woman was surprised to see him and was reluctant to give him his daughter's forwarding address. She eyed his shabby clothes and glanced at his rusty old car. "Paige married and Doris lives with her. I hope you don't expect the welcome that was given to the prodigal son," she said coldly. She was her grandmother's best friend. "After what you did to them, I'd expect the worst if I were you." Nicholas didn't even reply. He just turned his back and walked away. He wasn't worried. He knew how to handle his mother. When he arrived at the address, he was stunned. His daughter and his mother were apparently living in a huge, luxurious mansion. He walked up to the door and rang the bell. "I want to speak to Doris or Paige Dacker, please," he told the uniformed maid who opened the door. "You mean Mrs. Dacker of Mrs. Henderson, sir." The maid corrected him with a disdainful smile, and she led him into a huge, elegant sitting room. A few minutes later, Paige walked in. She stared at him in silence, but without any trace of surprise, and Nicholas knew that the meddling neighbor had called to warn them that he was coming. "Paige, my baby," he said, and stepped forward to embrace the lovely woman his daughter had become. "What is it that you want, father?" she asked without a trace of anger in her voice. "I wanted to see you, and Grandma Doris, "Honey," Nicholas said with his best smile. "I've missed you so much." At that moment, Doris walked in. She too looked calm and a lot younger than her years. "Nicholas," she said, "what do you want?" Nicholas flushed. "I wanted to see my family," he cried. "I was hoping for a warm welcome." "You abandoned me, father," Paige said coldly. "You expected warmth?" "Mom," whined Nicholas. "It wasn't me. Donna, she insisted. She said she'd leave me." "Oh," cried Doris with a knowing smile. "But you're here alone. Does that mean that the money ran out and so did Donna?" Nicholas looked around the beautiful room with envy. "You're certainly not short," he said bitterly. "I would have thought you could spare something. I'm unemployed and struggling." "I'm surprised you have the gall to ask us for anything, father," Paige said. "You left us when we needed you most, but we managed. Now, thanks to my husband, we have everything we need." "I'm still your father," Nicholas said indignantly. "You're nothing to me," she said, but she reached for her grandmother's hand. Doris was looking at Nicholas with tears and sadness in her eyes. "But for Grandma Doris' sake, I'll help you." Paige walked over to a delicate Louis XV desk and unlocked the drawer. She fished out a set of house keys and placed some money in an envelope. "These are the keys to the old house. There's $5,000 in the envelope. Don't think you'll get a cent more, so don't bother coming back." Paige comforted Grandma Doris by placing her arm around her shoulder and guiding her out of the room. Shortly thereafter, the maid arrived and escorted Nicholas out, preventing him from stealing any of the clearly valuable trinkets. Nicholas remained seated in his car for quite some time, gazing at his daughter's vast estate. "I did what was necessary," he lamented. "Why can't anyone see how much I've struggled? This world lacks appreciation."